Bastian. Okay, great. So moving on to our first speaker, all the way from Lithuania, I've been told. He's originally from Sweden. He's working as a consultant for Euromonitor, monitoring what's happening, not just in Europe, but actually around the world, in the area of plant meat and plant-based varieties, alternatives for dairy as well. Last time we spoke, come on the stage, David. I remember last time we met, it was in Wageningen about half a year ago.
About half a year, yeah.
You really motivated us because you showed all the fascinating figures showing that this market that we're going to talk about is really, really exploding. Really encouraging. And today you'll share some new insights on what's actually happening right now in different countries, relevant consumer drivers. So I can't wait to hear your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, David, Ingemar.
Thank you, Jerome, for the introduction. So I work at Euromonitor International. I see my role as sort of being the link between what the industry needs to know and what Euromonitor can find out. So when we speak later, the more you can tell me about what's important to you, the easier it is for me to make sure that our content stays as relevant as possible to what you do every day and makes that as easy as possible. And today you're going to get a preview of an imminent a publication of Euromonitor International called Climate Concern and Meat Reduction, the global picture. Because what we do is we are very strong in the cross-comparability. We can find how the trends interact throughout the regions globally and find those things that really can propel you, accelerate, as Jerome said, into something bigger. So, and I'm going to speak only about meat substitutes today because this is what this piece is about. And if you like the presentation today, it's also going to be available as a free webinar in April or May in an extended form. So if you have colleagues that can't attend today, that can't see the live stream for some reason, but you like it and you think it would be relevant for them, you can invite them to that one. And the content is going to be available on Passport for all our subscribers, of course. So I'm the keynote speaker today. And I think often about what is the role of a keynote speaker, what does it mean, except it sounds fancy. Well, first of all, I think it's my role to form a common understanding about the market, because if we have a common understanding about the market, when we go and meet the network and want to come to some kind of conclusion, we can go straight to the business decisions. The second task that I'm going to try to fulfill with you today is to give you a challenging perspective, something that can engage you into a discussion that might result in new perspectives on marketing, exports, business decisions, or other things like that. Slow slide like that. So I work for Euromonitor International, which is a leading provider of strategic market intelligence with over 40 years in the business. We have a global network of 15 offices with a recent opening in Düsseldorf here in Germany. So we're going to have a little bit more local coverage of German market as well. And what we do, we study consumer markets in 100 countries worldwide. And we do so using local people, freelancing analysts that are in each of those countries. Starting the actual presentation, we have done a lifestyle survey, and though this survey is actually now available in 40 countries, I've just taken the countries that we had from the very start of this survey. We do it every year, so you can see sort of how it moves in each country throughout the years. And we asked people, are you worried about climate change? And people are worried. You can say 61% globally, with quite different countries in the first, second, third place are worried about climate. So this is far from being a Western European trend, a North American trend, a German trend. It is a global issue that people care about. And as a global issue, it can have a global impact. We can also see that about the same amount of the respondents that we have talked to worldwide say that they try to have a positive impact on the environment through their everyday actions. Now that may not be climate action, that may not be meat reduction, but it shows again that caring for the environment is something that is in our human nature, and it's something that is global. And as something global, it's something that has the potential to be used worldwide. Now you saw the big increase in climate concern here in Russia, right? you don't see the same increase in care for the environment. That's because care for the environment can be pruning your apple tree, or recycling, or buying free-range eggs, or grass-fed beef, for example. However you understand that. But meat reduction can be one way to reduce your emission or indirect emissions of climate gas and reduce your impact on the climate in that way. So a lot of people try to reduce their meat intake. And if you look at the countries, I think it's very interesting. We have Brazil, China, France, Germany, India. About 30% of respondents say they're trying to reduce their meat reduction for whatever reason. But when you talk to the people, you ask them simple question. You don't say, are you vegetarian, are you vegan? Because there are different. When I used to live in Bamberg in southern Germany, and it was me and another guy from Britain. We were both vegetarians, and we went to the local Stube, and we asked, haben Sie etwas vegetarisch auf das Menü? Ja, wir haben viel Fisch. So that's where we stopped being vegetarian for the time. When ask people, are you eating fish? Are you eating meat? Are you eating dairy? Are you eating eggs? And then you apply on an objective definition of what a vegetarian or a vegan is to that, you can see that the numbers of people that actually follow such a diet is like 1-2%. It's very, very low. So the far bigger picture is meat reduction, and that's also why we have meat substitutes. But there is another big driver for substitution toward plant-based, away from meat, and that is the recommendations on health. A lot of countries have these ministries that talk about what is a healthy diet. And it seems like the World Health Organization's recommendation to limit red meat intake to a cooked weight of about half a kilogram per week is consensus building worldwide. You can see the same kind of recommendations in the Netherlands, in China, in Sweden, in the UK also. These countries actually, they go even further. They say you should limit meat, but there's no limit from the WHO on chicken meat or poultry, for example. There's only on the red meat, so pork and beef. You have the outliers also, the big traditional meat producers, meat consumers. You have Germany, slightly higher, but it's the meat that's being limited there. The US has something completely different than a maximum intake, okay? They have a recommended daily intake, which is about 50% higher than what the World Health Organization says should be the maximum intake. And then you have Russia as another big outlier with a maximum intake of about twice what the World Health Organization says is healthy for you, from based on research and based on article reviews and so on, what they have. So we have a second driver now for meat reduction or interest in plant-based diets. These two interest parts seem to often go together. So health is one, definitely important. Everybody cares about health globally. A climate concern, we see a lot of people are worried about it, and if you have a solution, you can use that worry. Price is another big factor. For example, in Russia, there was a big trend toward meat reduction for a while because food prices went up, people didn't have so much money, so they switched to something cheaper. And from most of the companies in meat substitutes that I've seen, they say, we use less land, less water, less resources, but for some reason it's more expensive. So there is an expectation, I think, also in developed market that it should move into some kind of at least the same. Animal welfare is a driver also, but less so than the others. I think in the US it's about 15% of the respondents that say that this is a motivation for them to switch to a plant-based diet. Now, very interestingly, in Europe, which long has been like the growth engine together with North America for this new generation of meat substitutes, you have a decline in one of the biggest markets. So why? How is that possible? In this publication that we're doing, Climate Concern and Meat Reduction, we're featuring some of the data of ProVeg that they have gathered from their panel of mostly vegetarians and vegans living in Germany, so people that are used to these products, the lifestyle, how you eat this way. And they say how important first are the following considerations when purchasing food items in general. First comes taste. Okay, good priority, I think. Second, you have nutritional value, sustainability. On price, you have about half the people saying it's important or very important, and then you have the biggest chunk actually say that it's like neutral. And I don't know, you can read this in different way. I read it in the way that a meat substitute should be on the same price level or slightly cheaper than whatever is trying to substitute. You can also, then people could say, you know, what are the areas in plant-based food that you think should develop the most? And some said meat substitutes. And from those that said meat substitutes, the main things that needed to be developed in order for them to be more happy about this, and this is vegetarians and vegans, people that are used to these products, that can be assumed to have consumed them quite a lot. They say there are not enough options on the market and the taste needs to be improved. Very interesting, very interesting. Okay. And you know, you have a boom in launches. You have a regional growth. You have Germany, which has grown like 20–30%, and you know, all this media has come out, and now it's in decline. How can that be? Well, when we look at where companies are selling their products, so we're looking on a brand level, we can see which companies are actually reaching out and have, you know, getting a few percentage in a foreign market with their brand. That's what we call that they sell in a second market to a significant degree. Not just send a batch over there and see what happens, but focus on several markets at once. Only 13% of the companies that we track in Western Europe in meat substitutes have that kind of impact in more than one country. Okay? Only 4% have that in more than 3 countries. And one of those 5 companies is Orkla, and they sell in the 4 Nordic markets. So I don't know if that counts. It's like one region, sort of. Western Europeans, for some reason, they are not exporting enough. And you have good products in neighboring markets that don't reach Germany to a significant degree. And then you have consumers complaining that there are not enough products. I mean, there has to be an acceleration, in the words of Jerome. I think this is a really interesting slide. So basically, to explain this, you have on the top, you have all the different companies that are exporting to more than one market, and then downwards going, each row is a country. So basically, the companies that have more blue in their column are the ones that are exporting to more countries. And now the Americans are coming. I've always thought that the Americans are probably 10 years in front of anything the European mind can come up with when it comes to marketing, when it comes to selling a product. This is the latest campaign of Beyond Meat. And I showed this to a couple of people and I asked, what are they selling? What's the product? I got, maybe it's the hat, maybe it's gym subscriptions, maybe it's just motivational speaker. You don't really know. He's an NBA player, and he basically speaks about how he breaks barriers in his career and so on. And it's implied that he eats Beyond Meat. Maybe he does to some extent. But they don't speak about the product. They speak about break barriers. They defy the convention, shatter the expectation. Who are you when you eat Beyond? You are like this guy, or even better, you are your own version of this guy. How can we stand up to this might? Globally, meat is set to outpace its substitutes, and here we're looking only at the actual growth, not percentage growth, but growth in terms of actuals. You can see there is a big growth for meat substitutes, and that's basically tofu in China, but there is a far bigger growth for meat in China. And the only markets where meat substitutes is set to outpace meat growth, so both fresh meat and processed meat, are the markets where meat consumption is in decline. Okay, so that's not very encouraging. And I think we need to look sober in this kind of perspective, as well as the possibilities. We've talked about the possibilities. We also need to talk about that meat actually are set to grow faster. So we need to think, what can we do to change that? And globally, price is an issue. Here is a recent launch in Germany, the insect burger at 30 euros per kilogram. It's almost twice as expensive as this frozen butcher Angus burger imported from the US. Also, of course, the US commercial looks very good. I went to German supermarkets, hypermarkets, online retailers. We took a lot of processed meat products. We just made a pure average of those prices. We took a lot of meat substitute products. We just made a pure average of those prices. And the difference between the two groups is about 43%. So that's quite a lot. Quite a lot extra you pay to have the meat substitutes. And in the Argentina crisis in 16, 17, we saw this very clearly. Processed meat and meat substitutes were the first to go when people had to save, and only then came meat, which was more of a necessity. So what are we actually trying to replace here is an important question. So I think that's enough for the baseline. From me, we'll have a few moments for questions, and then I'll hand over to our next speakers. Thank you very much for listening.
Perfect timing, David. I didn't have to wave the green pea pot.
I didn't see anything, yeah?
Instead, because you're great on time, we have room for 2 questions from the audience. If there's anybody who has a question, please raise your arm. I'll come to you and put the microphone in front of you. Any questions? I'm sure there are. Please stand up and state your name and the organization you represent. I'll be holding the mic.
Oh, sure thing. My name's Chris Bryant. I'm from the University of Bath.
Hello, Chris.
Thank you for your talk. Very interesting stuff. You spoke a lot about price. Are you optimistic about price trajectories for meat replacements, given some of the big acquisitions, the vegetarian butcher getting acquired by Unilever? Does that open the door to economies of scale that might make these products much cheaper in the future?
It's not only about economies of scale, is it? It's about how you price your products. Even if you, I don't know how the margin sides look of it, but basically, I think if you take Norway is a good example. Okay, in Norway the prices used to be like 40% more higher than in Sweden, which was really strange to me. And then you had a company called Anamma, which went into Norway and sold it at the same level as in Sweden, which for the Norwegians meant a big discount, and they could sort of grow that market. So what comes first? Is it the hen or the egg? You know. Yeah.
And our meat successors. I prefer, by the way, the term meat successors, not so much meat substitutes, because I really think this is the next generation of meat. So meat successors. I think are meat successors too expensive, or is meat too cheap? Okay. Second question. Anybody? No questions for David? Like a big hand for David. Thank you very much for this interesting presentation.